Hello and welcome to Earth Calling. We're your hosts, Ed and Lazlo. Every week we bring you a fresh slice of online content, sorting through the likes, the memes, the insta-Queens, the swipes, the scrolls, and the Twitter trolls. Together, we're laying down our 21st century digital legacy. So sit back, relax, and buckle in. This is Earth Calling.
Hello and welcome back, Earth Callers, to our podcast. We're very, very glad you joined us today because we've got a special episode for you. This episode is much requested by our listeners because it is none other than the very, very notorious dating app Tinder.
Ooh.
Ed, Tinder, we finally got there. We thought we never would.
We've had it on the back burner for a while, and we've resisted it for many reasons, but here we are, and we are going to be diving into the world of online dating for you all.
Indeed. We've kind of skirted around the edges of the more niche platforms out there, trying to ignore the elephant in the room, which is, of course, this giant of modern day culture and modern day millennial dating.
Exactly. The source of many an interesting story, many a regret-filled hookup, and many a lovely burgeoning relationship.
Hang on a sec. I feel Ed's already revealed a bit too much about his own experiences.
I think just before we get stuck into the episode itself, it would be remiss not to comment on Lazlo's excellent haircut that he is sporting today. It's been several months, but he is sporting a very smart new lid. He's done up his zipper on his jacket, so he now looks even more like Liam Gallagher. Hasn't shaved, but that's all part of the sort of German Berlin mystique. This is great.
This is the 5 o'clock shadow, Ed.
Okay.
I'm sure you'll see it on the screenshots which we post to our Instagram at @Earth_calling_pod.
It really rolls off the tongue, that, doesn't it?
It does not. It does not. But yes, I'm quite proud to look like Liam Gallagher, like Manchester. Yeah. Oh, fucking Oasis. Ever heard of them? No.
Today is gonna.
Give
anyway.
me the day.
Great. Okay. Right. So
what would have happened, by the way, if Liam Gallagher had access to Tinder? By the way, he actually still does have access to Tinder. But
he does.
Yes.
Or he might be on Raya, which is, without getting too far ahead of ourselves, a celebrity dating app, which is just for the rich and famous. Now, I'd like to say we'll cover that in a future episode, but that would rely on Lazlo or me obtaining access via some degree of notoriety or fame.
Still holding out for it, Earth Callers.
Yeah. So balls in your court, everyone listening.
Yeah.
You could get us there, but we would need some degree of fame. Anyway, today we are, of course, discussing Tinder, and as is customary, normal service is resumed with Earth Calling, story time with Ed. Of course, last week we had the wonderful Josh Berry with us, but this week we are back to basics, and I'll be running us through how the app was created before jumping into some of our own experiences. So Tinder was created in 2012. Again, always longer ago than you think, but that's just a sign of our age, perhaps, Lazlo. And it was created in a startup incubator called Hatch Labs, which really takes the incubation element to a next level with the idea of hatching these startups, just like eggs under a goose. Who's going to lay the golden egg? Turned out the golden egg on this occasion was laid by Sean Rad, Jonathan Badeen, Justine Mateen, Joeen Manoz, he's all rhyme, and Dinesh Morjani and Whitney Wolf. I've butchered all of their names.
Oh, so just the 7 co-founders then?
Yeah, so this article I think is a bit liberal with who was actually in the room. Typically you'd see 1 or 2 founders. I think in reality it was Sean Rad and Justine. Sorry, it's actually Justin Mateen. Not Justine Mateen.
That's a bit of fabrication. You got quite carried away with the "een" ending.
Yeah. Well, Sean Rad, Jonathan Badeen, Justin Mateen, Joe Manoz, Dinesh Morjani, and Whitney Wolf.
It also sounds like, a lyric that Billy Joel didn't quite allow to feature in "We Didn't Start the Fire." He's kind of
Sean
riffing
Rad,
Doris
Jonathan
Day,
Badeen, Justin.
Exactly.
Dinesh Morjani. Exactly. So we didn't start the Tinder.
That's actually,
nice.
it ties in nicely, doesn't it?
Very good. No, lovely. So anyway, this was the founding group, and an interesting side note, which I'll just drop in, is that Whitney Wolf, some of our listeners might be familiar with her because she later left Tinder under a cloud of acrimony. There was a bit of a bust up, and she went over to found an app called Bumble, which recently IPO'd for, I think, several billion. Was it 4 billion? Anyway, a very large sum. So she went on to do her own thing and had a massive falling out with the founders. There were various sexual assault allegations, and it was quite messy. So anyway, so the initial app was founded in this startup incubator called Hatch Labs, and the idea was that Sean and Justin had decided that they were at college together, and they decided that they wanted to have an app that capitalized on the fact that no matter where you are, you feel extra comfortable approaching somebody if you know that they want you to approach them. So this sort of double opt-in system was pioneered by Tinder. Of course, it's now seen to be completely obvious, but back then it wasn't, that, you know, it'd be actually very comfortable for people to know that the other person is into them before creating the match. So they thought that this app filled a gap in social networking for reaching out to strangers as well. Traditional social networks would join people who already know each other. And what they did to get it started, because I was actually very interested to work out how do you create an app that relies on pairing people when you don't have anybody on it, because of course these social networks rely on reaching a critical mass. And what they did was they went to various college campuses in America. Of course, by the way, I should have said this was founded on the West Coast.
I don't think at this point you really don't need to. You only mention the founding location if it differs from the West.
And although interestingly, this was founded in Los Angeles rather than San Francisco, so pretty diverse. In West Hollywood, otherwise known as WeHo, not to be confused with Soho.
Not a particularly nice. Not WeHo is not a particularly nice shortening of a place name. But although pretty apt for Tinder.
Yes. Yes.
WeHo.
WeHo. Yeah. Ho ho ho. Founded in LA, and they were crowned the best new startup of 2013 and won the TechCrunch Crunchy Award. What a ridiculous world it is that we live in. But I don't think they were awarded a chocolate biscuit, as would be the expectation in the UK. Love a crunchy bar, but they did win this big award, and subsequently the app gained notoriety. But what I was saying is they supplanted it on college campuses, and they basically told people, okay, this is the hot new app. All of the really attractive guys are on it, and they told all the guys, all the guys, all the really attractive girls are on it, and all the girls that all the really attractive guys are on it, and vice versa. And you know, if you're gay, etc., etc. And because everybody at college is, you know, probably looking to get their game face on, it managed to actually reach penetration, became extremely popular. And
I wouldn't be the host of a comedy podcast if I didn't say that I had to extinguish around 12 penetration jokes just then. But you know, given my experience in the field now of comedy podcasting, I chose to extinguish them. Episode 2, totally different story. I would have gone down.
You would have hopped on that.
The editor would not have allowed it.
You would have got on that bandwagon, and I would have cut it. Yeah. But back to the founding story. Story time with Ed is the vaguely serious part of this endeavor,
of course,
which you know people I think love. Still waiting to hear that feedback in the DMs, but
from those people,
But anyway, it is subsequently shot to international renown, and I think as at the latest count of the dates that they released, they have about 1.6 billion swipes per day, which is pretty nuts if you think about it. And the average user of the platform, the average user logs into the app 11 times a day, which is
You mean they open the app, right? They're not actually logging out and logging in.
Yeah, okay. Open the
app. Sorry, but some people listening to this show might know the difference between
You're quite right. No, so they open the app 11 times a day with the male user averaging 7.2 minutes on the app a day. Averaging 7.2 minutes per session, and female users averaging 8.5 minutes per session. So that's 80 minutes per day and 93 minutes per day respectively, which I could not believe that. The average user of Tinder spends more than an hour on it a day.
That's bonkers. And what does it say that women on average spend longer than men?
Quite interesting, isn't it? I would have thought it'd be the other way around.
Yeah, exactly, because of the time men spend swiping. But maybe it's a reflection on the quality of messages that women deliver.
Exactly.
That they're more thoughtful and they take time to respond.
You're actually quite right. So something that I found further digging was that the average man swipes yes on far more women than the average woman swipes yes on average men. However, the average woman, when she does initiate a conversation, uses far more characters in that initiating message than the average man, indicating a much more thoughtful initial opener. Which is probably because with women, you have a much greater pool to select. You can therefore be more selective, choose who you like, whereas men adopt a scattergun approach, rather like VC funding, whereby sorry, that was terrible. But you adopt a broad approach and just see what sticks. So Tinder, that is the backstory. It is an inherent part of the millennial experience of online dating and has grown to be part of the public conversation around love.
It's amazing though, isn't it, that you imagine a world before Tinder or before online dating, and now with all online dating, no matter the platform, we basically associate these apps with swiping and very quick decision making to match with someone and potentially meet up with them. And this is amazing because it's made, it's totally broken down the taboo of online dating. If you imagine a world before Tinder, these dating websites, which firstly looked like, they were very designed in the 90s. You had to fill in this huge questionnaire with all of your different, interests. Like, I didn't register on these platforms.
Well, hang on. I was about to say it would not surprise me, and I'm sure it would not surprise anybody listening to hear that Lazlo actually had a kind of 2012 OK Cupid phase.
Sorry, I take that the wrong way, whatever way it was meant. I said
chess, vegetarianism / part-time meat connoisseur. Oh,
Rafa Nadal impressionist actually scratched that after last episode. Yeah. Definitely scratched that. But anyway, I think I'm right in saying that there was a big taboo associated with online dating back in the day, and you were considered nothing short of a social pariah if you confessed to doing this kind of stuff. You'd actually keep it very much secret that you were dating online. And also it's just funny because these websites claimed to match you based on this huge number of interests, and and I love it how that's basically been replaced by ultimately a superficial snap call on whether or not you like someone's appearance.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that brings us on nicely to a very interesting set of statistics that I came across around the way that dating behaviour and meeting of couples has changed over the years. And what I'm looking at here is a fascinating chart, which I should probably share in the show notes, which shows how couples met in the US between the year 1940 and the year 2020. And you have various different options, right? So the first is met in church, obviously back in the day, huge. Second is neighbours. Third is met in college. Fourth is met in primary or secondary school. Fifth is family, as in met through family rather than dating somebody in your family. Depending on maybe the deep south, I don't know what flies, a bit like Norfolk, that might get us cancelled. But met through co-worker, met through friends, met in a bar or a restaurant, or met online. Now, I would ask you, Lazlo, so in 1940, what do you think was the primary kind of way to meet somebody in the US?
1940. In that very year, so
the 40s, let's say.
The 40s, okay.
Is there a name for the 40s? Like, you got the swinging 60s, probably like the terrible 40s because there's a war.
Yeah, or the war-torn 40s.
Yeah. Okay, so picture yourself in 1940.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I'm lucky and I'm actually in my hometown as opposed to fighting a war somewhere. Yeah. I think I would probably meet my future wife at a dance, at a dance in a...
At a barn dance?
A barn dance or a bar, a bar.
Or in a bar.
Speakeasy.
Okay, so I mean, sadly, barn dance is not one of the kind of the options on the survey.
What I meant is basically in public.
Fine. So yeah, but there's multiple options. So I will put you out of your misery. So family, through family was the primary way that people met. Friends, family, or potentially at primary or secondary school. Now, what's very interesting is over the years, meeting through family has plummeted. So it was 30% of couples in 1940, and today it is about 7% of couples meet through family.
Wow.
Similarly, meeting at secondary school has plummeted. Meeting at work has gone up, and meeting in a bar or restaurant has also shot up. So meeting in a bar or restaurant was 10% back then. It's now more like 30%. Of course, the fascinating one for this purpose of discussion today is meeting online, right? So in 1990, it was effectively 0. In 2000, it had shot up to 10% of couples met online. And then in 2020, it is 40%, 40% of couples meet online in 2020 in the US.
Absolutely crazy.
Isn't that nuts?
And that's only going to go up to the
absolutely.
point where...
You should look at the graph. I mean, if you think about that, that is the definition of exponential. Weirdly, there's a slight plateau between 2005 and 2010, which I guess was... You probably had your OkCupids for some people, but you hadn't got apps yet, and then it really takes off.
Yep.
Meeting in church has sort of trended at around 10% down to about 5%, but that stayed pretty stable, interestingly. So
I'd be curious to hear the stats on meeting in online church during the COVID pandemic. That could be a really new lease on life for Christians looking to get out into the dating world.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. I say, Mary, you do look fine with that filter.
Mary, good name.
Yeah.
Why, thank
Quite
you,
contrary.
Joseph. Joseph, interests, carpentry.
Mary somehow gets pregnant after the Zoom call.
Classic
with
Mary.
No human contact,
Immaculate. So that's what's changed and the rapid growth of online dating. And I think we have actually got to a point now where it is no longer taboo to say, oh yeah, we actually met on a dating app. If you say, I'm going out with someone and we met online.
Not at all. I do know some people who still don't, they don't like to reveal it as their first thing. They say kind of like, oh, we met in a bar. It's like, oh, that's interesting. How did you connect before the bar? It's like, well, that was Tinder, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, but enough about the context. We've been treading water and avoiding what people really want to know, Lazlo, which is, have you used Tinder? I mean, you clearly have. And what were your experiences?
I will happily admit to having used Tinder, but still refute having signed up to the early days of OkCupid and filled in the 20-question strong questionnaire in 2012 when I was a 19-year-old, by the way.
Interesting, anyway. You're probably more of an eHarmony man.
eHarmony! That is just, in this day and age where we're so used to startup names like, Wobbly or Sparkly. A name like
Wobbly
eHarmony.
Part of your profile, or what?
Wobbly was my my early online dating experiences, and safe to say it got me weak-kneed. So yes, I have been on Tinder, of course, in the past. I'm not currently on Tinder. I, along with many of our listeners who I'm sure have done the same, I have deleted and reinstalled the app at least 3 or 4 times. You know the feeling. You've swiped so much. It's just the sickening feeling because you realize that all you're doing is playing this game, and then you just delete it, and then you kind of get it back again. So I've gone through those cycles. I want to reveal first that actually the way that I've used it in the past has also been quite innocent. In a sort of serendipitous way, it's been innocent because when I was living in Moscow, for example, I ended up going on this platonic Tinder lunch, which was basically happened. I was talking to this girl. It was going very well. I thought it was going to be a good date. We arranged to meet up. And the day before meeting up, she sends me this message saying, "Hi, I'm still good to meet for tomorrow, but just to let you know, my circumstances have changed somewhat, and I will no longer be able to attend this date in a romantic capacity."
How do you do this, mate?
I have no idea what happened, but maybe she probably just realized she didn't find me attractive. But I made up these stories that she got back with this old boyfriend and she didn't, God. She wasn't ready to.
So at that point, let's just rewind here. Okay, so at that point, I think I would speak for a lot of listeners in saying that you would probably go, okay, that's fine. Given that I am on here to actually have romantic encounters, that is kind of the reason I'm on here. I might have ducked out of that lunch, but you decided to go along anyway. Why?
Well, now maybe our listeners will remember my chat roulette methodology or my chat roulette philosophy. I like to put myself in quite odd situations, and I thought it was very amusing the fact that this girl had basically said that there was no way this date was going to turn into anything romantic. So yeah, the curiosity in me won, and I went along to this restaurant in Moscow. Had a very cheap 3-course meal. I believe it was a cold Russian salad, a borscht, and something sweet.
Perhaps
and just said
honey
goodbye.
tart.
It was a honey tart, a medavik, as it's called. And then went home. It was a very, very dry encounter.
Gosh, did you regret it or?
No, I didn't. I think I'd say yes again. I just...
What would it take to get you to regret a chance encounter? You'd basically have to be bludgeoned over the head or something by the person you'd met for you to be like, actually, could have just done without that one.
I'd probably have to be robbed at gunpoint to actually regret it. Yeah, well, I'm sadly that anecdote didn't end in a funny story. It was merely this lunch, which actually ended up being very dry because despite... the frivolity of our online interaction, it turned out we didn't really click in person, even on a friendship level, sadly. But a kind of a sunnier story was when I to get back to Berlin after the my Christmas break last year, and of course it was quite tricky to get back to Berlin from a country which was experiencing big spikes in COVID infections. I had to fly through Ukraine. And I thought, because I was going to be in Ukraine for 2 days, why not download Tinder? It's a great way to connect to people very, very quickly. And I connected to this girl, actually only matched with one person, sent her a message saying, do you want to go for a walk tomorrow? Because, no bars were open and lockdown restrictions were still in place in Kiev. And we went for this really, really cool 5-hour walk in the city. She was basically my tour guide. She told me all about the history, lots of nice buildings.
How old was she?
She was my age. She was.
Okay, she wasn't a sort of 50-year-old tour guide or something.
Natalia Osapenko. Lazlo, to your right you see beautiful Kremlin of Kiev. This is where, of course, Daniil Dubov, the ancient emperor, met his 14 wives. No,
reminds
I
me,
did
of course,
not.
of the Airbnb tour guide in Omsk. Or was it Tomsk?
Yes.
I think it was actually Tommy
Yes,
Tomsk. Yeah. He was very good. Do you remember him?
Might have been Tommy Tomsk,
I have a car. Ah, excellent.
Exactly, yeah. I have
useful.
degree in history and a car.
Yeah, philology.
Perfect. Ticks all the boxes. No, I did not sleep with a 50-year-old Ukrainian tour guide. I did not sleep with any Ukrainian, in fact.
Right,
No,
exactly.
I did not sleep with any Ukrainian.
Another platonic date for
It was another platonic date. So those
Did
were
she
two
know
examples.
that it was going to be platonic, or did you make it platonic?
Look, this is another question altogether. I believe that there was potentially some expectations from one of our sides, and not mine. That this would lead somewhere.
Well,
Sadly,
I think that's probably fair to have some expectation, given you're on bloody Tinder,
it's
mate.
a Tinder date.
What is hilarious is you're giving the wrong impression of this platform, because everything you read is about Tinder being a hookup app that everybody just uses to copulate, and you have somehow managed to turn it into what sounds like a sort of, rather pleasant kind of letter writing exchange where you.
For me, quite frankly, it's a quick borscht and a bye-bye, or a, tour of Ukraine and ta-da.
So your experiences with Tinder, contrary to everyone's expectations, although actually perhaps not contrary to everyone's expectations, have been entirely platonic.
I think by now, people who've been listening to the show think that probably aligns exactly with with their expectations. Thank you. Anyway.
But no, you've been platonic with everyone you've met on Tinder.
Well, look, I'm not going to go into the details of the flip side of my experiences, but I did rather amusingly come across some screenshots the other day that I saved in a folder somewhere on my Google Drive. Also paints a nice picture for how I conduct my online affairs. But basically, I found screenshots of exchanges I'd had with women on Tinder. And I think I'd taken screenshots because I found them quite amusing or horrifically cringe, and I'd probably sent them to my brother or something. But I'm now very, very willing to share the kinds of things that I was saying to girls on Tinder to try and maybe lead to a date.
Because I would just say at this point, at this juncture, for anybody who hasn't used Tinder who's listening, I would say that the onus is typically on the male participant, if it is a heterosexual encounter, to elicit the conversation. It seems as though the expectation is very much that the men need to, get the chat going, sustain the chat. And I think part of that is probably to do with the fact that women have far more options in general. It could, of course, also be the case that Lazlo and I just don't get that many matches. But I think from speaking to people that this is quite typical. So anyway, Lazlo, you had to show that you're a funny guy, and this is what you said.
Yeah. And on that point, by the way, I have reached out to the support team at Tinder many times to complain of a glitch whereby I don't get matches. They assure me that they're still dealing with my request. But if you're listening, by the way, Tinder, and by the way, as always, thanks for sponsoring our episode. If you're listening, I'm still waiting to hear back on why I only get 3 matches on my...
Despite having repetitive strain injury in your right thumb.
Exactly. So anyway, moving on to my let's just call them chat up lines. I don't see them as chat up lines. I see them as quirky ways to get girls to like you.
In a platonic way.
In a platonic way. How to get a girl to agree to a platonic borscht with you. I suppose most borsches are platonic, but here we go. So the first one was to a girl called Marlene. Great name. I simply said, Hufflepuff or Ravenclaw?
Oh, God, okay. Yeah, quite millennial that.
She said, neither. I hate Harry Potter. At this point, I definitely had a bit of a crisis. I was thinking, come on, who's that brutal when you put yourself out there? So I just said, oh, shame, I'll just put you in Hufflepuff then. She didn't respond. So 2 hours later, being the, insecure oyster I am, I just said, in inverted commas, I said, please not Gryffindor, please not Gryffindor. And she still didn't respond. That was the end of my...
Amazing. Mate,
my
she doesn't deserve you. She doesn't deserve you, Marlene.
I kind of agree. Thank you for saying that. I hope all of our listeners agree. And please do let us know in the DMs, the very, very dry DMs, if they do or don't deserve me. Number 2, I think, is definitely on me, for not getting a response. It was pretty terrible. I said to Emily, whoa, Emily, I couldn't help notice in your second picture that you like reading books. That's crazy. I do too. We have so much in common. And then I ended with the question, do you prefer hardbacks or paperbacks?
Oh, is that sort of slightly innuendo-y, or?
I don't think it was meant to be euphemistic. But Emily also Emily also decided not to indulge in conversation with me, which is fine. I'd already got the gratification that she found me at least a tiny bit attractive, so I didn't take it too badly. Sylvia, on the other hand, I thought I'd, when you are swiping through people's pictures, you also get a vibe that they're fairly cool, don't you? You know, they might be cool, they might be quirky, whatever. So Sylvia had given me really good vibes. So I said to Sylvia, hey Sylvia, I've been having trouble with a blockage in my kitchen sink. No visible clog, but I think the culprit is some bits of fried egg I stupidly let slide down the hole. Any tips?
Okay, what was it about Sylvia that made you think that explaining the plumbing of your sink would be the way to win her round?
It was that a good proportion of her pictures had been taken on a film camera. I'm not going to lie.
Right, okay. And that made you think that she sort of has a part-time side hustle as a plumber?
No, not at all. I just thought, she might be open to a very left field chat up line. Fair. Involving a sink.
Was she?
No.
Right. I mean, who said romance is dead, right?
Yeah, exactly. So look, what can we learn from this? And also, just to circle back to the poor extraterrestrials who are having to listen to this episode thinking, what is this absolute tragedy of human dating in the...
Tragic comedy, in your case.
Tragic comedy of Earth in the 21st century and Earthlings trying to meet each other. Well, extraterrestrials, I'll just say Tinder is a platform where you have to stand out somehow, you know? People, not just women, men as well, get hundreds of messages every day. Well, if you're lucky. And there's nothing worse than getting, you know, hey, hi, how was your day?
Yes.
So you have to stand out in some way. And I don't regret sending those messages at all, because I think if you get a response that kind of riffs off you and, you know, continues the vibe, that's what leads on to the many, many successful, you know, dates that are happening on the platform today, and how people are meeting their lifelong partners.
Exactly. I would completely agree, actually, despite just having been quite amused by that. I think the strategy that you have adopted there is cutting to the chase. So you have recognised the fact that Tinder is full of chance encounters and gamified interactions where people don't really care, but you have gone, okay, I'm a pretty odd bloke, okay? And I'm going to put this stuff out there, and if you bite back, then we are off to the races, because if you reply to my message about fried egg in my sink, then we're probably going to get on like a house on fire, and I know a great place that does a good borscht 3-course business lunch.
Exactly.
Now, whether or not you did find that diamond in the rough, needle in the haystack, 1 in a million girl is, you know, we will leave that open, and we will not confirm or deny whether that...
We will leave that for the OkCupid episode.
Yeah.
Well, no, we won't.
No.
But Ed, hang on a minute, because you've been sitting there, you've been throwing your little pebbles against my very, very brittle glass house of dating, and I want to know what your experience of these dating apps is, and actually I would like to also dish out some ridicule to you.
Yes. Okay, so completely fair. I would say, unfortunately, and this isn't me just trying to wriggle out of it, so I have not actually had a huge amount of experience with Tinder. So
here we bloody go.
No, but so I did use Tinder. I have used Tinder. I think I was probably quite an early adopter, actually. So I was on Tinder in, I think, what must have been 2013, 14, 15, 16. Over that period.
That's the university sweep.
I think there are probably people listening to this who know me who are trying to do the maths about various relationships. Anyway, I'd never been on it when I was with someone else, obviously. But I think so when I moved to London in 2016, I did get on it and was using it. And I thought that it was fascinating, and I really liked it because, and I'll tell you what I liked about it was the fact that you could go and meet somebody who you'd exchanged a few messages with, and the risk was just so low. Now, let me explain that. That makes it sound, I know the risk is actually quite high, or perceived to be quite high, but a lot of women think
the risk of what? The risk of getting caught?
I don't know. No, so what I mean is that the opportunity cost, maybe, or the risk of things going wrong was very low, because if you go and you meet someone who doesn't know anyone that you know, you get a huge amount of freedom in that interaction. So I would meet someone on Tinder, they don't know anyone I know, I don't know anyone they know, we go and meet in a random bar and we have a drink, and if it goes great, we go on another drink and we kick something off, and if it goes terribly, we both go home and nobody needs to know about it. And I think that for me was extremely attractive, because it meant that you obtain a certain freedom to, you know, just behave how you want and see how things go. And I know that then sounds like I love this freedom to be a total maniac.
Ed walks in a kind of dinosaur onesie, just going like, "Is anyone here called Celia?" And this girl's like, "No, Celia's here."
I love it how in my head I was like, yeah, some maybe sort of flippant, not very nice, kind of threatening guy. But obviously in reality, you're like, yeah, you went in dressed as a bloody dinosaur because you knew that you could get away with it. Yeah. So I never did dress as a dinosaur, but I did have several dates that I really enjoyed, and I loved the fact that I would never have met those people were it not to have been for the app. Now, I'm going to leave it there, and I know that that's extremely ankle-dangly Victorian because I haven't actually revealed a huge amount, but the reason I haven't is that I honestly haven't used the app for 5 years, and I have in fact used other apps like Bumble or Hinge more recently. And so what I'll do is I will make a promise to our listeners that I will delve into some similar experiences that you have had when we talk about Hinge or Bumble, because trust me, like that, we can go into all sorts. My profile, which
which
actually even references this podcast. That was how keen I was to spread the word. So that's a little...
Indeed. Indeed.
Tell us a fun fact about you. Well, funny you should ask. I actually have an online podcast called Earth Calling, which I'm desperately trying to grow, so check it out. I don't know whether my matches went up or down having added that to my bio, but maybe
it'd be interesting to see the stats. Yeah. Interesting.
Anyway, so that's me on Tinder, but we'll share more in due course on the others.
Now, Earth Callers, is time for the great rebirth, capital G, capital R, the renaissance of everyone's favourite feature on this show, and that is, of course, Lazlo's Listicles, which has taken not a 1 week but a 2 week break because of our special guest episode last week and because of sheer laziness of the listicle department. Again, not down to a specific individual, more a kind of team failure.
We actually had a bit of feedback, didn't we, from one of our listeners who messaged in on Instagram saying, where the fuck was the listicle? So it's good to know that some people enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of mixed messages. It's kind of people only get in touch to tell us when they're upset that something has lacked from an episode. But anyway, delighted to have the listicles back. Lazlo's Listicles! And still working on the jingle, by the way. Bloody intern is meant to be on the jingle.
Yeah, had COVID, didn't she?
Of course, he, but you don't even know.
They.
They, them. But anyway... Very happy to have this new listicle content for you. Now, Ed, I have found an article which I really hope you haven't come across. It's some bizarre facts about Tinder. Mm-hmm. It comes from the website datingzest.com. Thanks for partnering with Tinder, datingzest.com, to sponsor us this week. And you're looking at me as though you've seen this article.
I was not trying to convey that because no, I have not. Okay. Dating Zest. No, it's not somewhere I spend much of my time.
Okay. Anyway, so this comes from datingzest.com, these stats, and this Lazlo's Listicles episode has a slight twist, as they all do.
A twisticle.
Keep you on your, it's a twisticle. And we're going to play 2 truths, 1 lie with this listicle. Now, I've picked out 2 of these crazy facts, and I've added my own, and I want you to tell me which 2 are true and which one is a lie.
Okay.
So are you ready? Are you clear on the format?
Clear.
Of course. Earth Callers, please do play along as you hear and try to beat Ed. Should have said to do that on the past episodes, but he's been annoyingly accurate, so you might not have beaten him. Now, here's fact 1. 1.1 billion matches happen on Tinder every day. Mm-hmm. Fact number 2. 95% of Tinder users meet their matches within a week.
So, wait, 95% of users meet someone they've matched with within a week?
Yep. Yes, exactly. And the last fact, 30% of Tinder users are married.
Okay, well, what's nuts is like all 3 of those I think are false, but clearly you're telling me 2 of those are true. Okay, well, let's go through them in sequence.
Let's just hang on, drop the accusations. Datingzest.com is telling you that too.
Right, that reputable source. Yeah, it makes Wikipedia look like a bloody source of truth. Check out the Wikipedia episode. Huge if true. So on the first point, I think you said that 1.1 billion matches occur daily. So I actually have a rival data point which I called out at the beginning of this episode, which was that 1.6 billion swipes occur per day. And Precisely. I know that the swipe to match rate is extremely low, not through just my own experience, but actually through empirical evidence that I've seen on the Wikipedia articles. So I think that unless my number is way off from the Wikipedia article, which may be out of date, of course, I think that is false. But let me just go through them because I think all of them are false, and then I'll have to make my mind up. So the second one that you said was that 95% of Tinder users meet a match within a week. Now, like there must be some caveat to this, because again, I know that of the matches that you connect with, you interact with a vanishingly small portion of them, and you maintain a conversation to the point of actually agreeing a meetup or exchanging numbers at an even more vanishingly small percentage of them. So that must be, maybe that's 95% of users who match with somebody and agree to go on a date.
Yeah,
do you think
I think we can discuss the interpretation of these statistics later, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the final one you said was 30% of people on Tinder are married, which is interesting. It makes me think of Ashley Madison, which was, of course, the website that enabled people to have an affair. Their strapline was, life's short, have an affair. pretty brutal. Got hacked, all of the people were revealed. Anyway, so I think that 1 billion matches a day is just too high. So I think, subject to a creative reinterpretation of point 2, I would say that number 2 and number 3 are true and number 1 is false. And of course that, the fact that 30% of users are married is pretty eye-wateringly high. I'm very doubtful of that, but I'm just going to have to go with it.
Yes, well, very good. You got it right. You've won this episode. Indeed. It's a bit annoying that you actually had the reference fact. I kind of forgot about that because that did give you a hint as to, well, to be fair, it was also very deductive of you to take that... the knowledge that the swipe match ratio is very low.
That is nuts, though, about number 3. Wow, that's scary, isn't it?
That was the one that really, really surprised me.
Do we have that breakdown by male and female?
Quite bonkers. No, Dating Zest did not go so far in that sense. So, well, I mean, look, Lazlo's Listicles is back. You once again proved your prowess in this sport. I wonder how many of you listening at home got the answer right. But stay tuned for future listicles, which glad to report our intern's back next week, so should have that jingle. Listicles over.
Well, on that listicle bombshell, we have run out of time, very sadly. But thank you so much, everybody, as ever, for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure. Please do give us a download on Spotify, a subscription and a review on Apple Podcasts. It really does mean the world and helps us a huge amount in terms of the rankings. And then do scoot on over to give us a follow on Instagram at earth_calling_pod, where we've started posting quite a lot of funny videos, so do take a look there and give us a follow.
Yes, thanks so much for joining us, and as always, please come along next week for another episode of Online Gold Digging, as Ed and I find content for the aliens in even more unexpected places, this time in a platform that has revolutionized audio communication and goes by the name Discord. So get those headsets at the ready and tune in with your family and with your friends. But for now, Earth out.